the first time since the playoffs started, we had 2 great games. Hello, everybody. It's Harry Bennett. Intern Noe. Outdrank the coverage college. I almost said outdrank the college. Maybe that's what we just named that one. I kind of like that. Outdrank the college.
Yeah.
Either way, we've already done the NFL show. We are properly sauced. It's time to talk a little college football. This is something that all the way back in 2012 we actually did. The Outdrank the Coverage original show was actually basically 45 minutes of pro and 45 minutes of college football. Remember that?
Yeah.
Grant was on the show for half of it, and the other half he would just literally stare at us because he has no – I mean, he watches at NFL. He's not a big fan of NFL. So we decided after those 2 semifinals that we had – and being on the new network, we had to bring out Outdrank the Coverage college style, and this is what we're going to do. Brought to you by Frisco Bar and Grill, the same people that bring you the NFL show. And again, yes, if you don't know, we are on a new network, the S2S Sports Network, brought to you by L4 Media Company, Brett Lee. We struck a deal over the last couple weeks to move all of our shows over to the S2S Sport Network. It'll be s2ssport.com when that site gets built. Right now, you can find all of our shows over at outdrankthecoverage.com. It'll also be on all the podcast platforms. Just give it time because it has to you have to get a couple episodes in before they start to do that. And once we get all those in, that'll all be back on there. But we're glad to be over in the new network, and we're glad to have the ability and the freedom to kind of talk what we want to talk. And one of those is college. We didn't really talk about this in the NFL show, but we're going to have so many off-season shows now. We're going to have Outdrank the Coverage sports movies episodes. We're going to have Outdrank the Coverage talking about past great teams, past great seasons, past great teams that didn't quite do it. Things like that. We're just going to have a lot of fun, and that's why we made the move. I think that was the biggest thing. Somebody asked why we made the move. I needed a new challenge, and B, I needed some stability. But C, we wanted the freedom to kind of do some things that we weren't doing. And we're going to get to do that, and that's the start of it right now. Outdrank the Coverage, college style. And to be honest with you, this was like the best year to do it because legitimately, this is the first year that it felt like a true playoff where anybody could win both of the games. Both games started the same. One team jumps out really big, then the other team comes back, and one of them they couldn't complete it, and the other one they could. I think that this is the type of Saturday that the NFL or the college football world wanted when the playoffs were started.
Yeah, the beauty of expanding to 4 is you get some teams that they might have started slow, but then they had a bunch of wins in a row to end the season. They're really strong. They might be the number 4 team in the country, but they might be the top team in the country overall at that point in time. So now you have 4 teams, and eventually college football is going to expand to 8, 12.
There's 12 next year. I think it starts next year.
Yeah. So right now we're in year 9 of the college football playoffs. We've never had as exciting of a semifinal matchups as we've had this weekend. No, some good years we'll have one, and then the other will be a blowout. But in most years, it was both 2 blowouts.
Yeah.
So this was a treat for anyone that's semi into college football or hardcore fans. You want to just dive right in, man? You want to talk about the first semifinal?
Well, first we want to thank Frisco Bar and Grill. You can find them online at the Frisco Bar and Grill. You and I have been there. We had an absolute blast. Not only when we did our show there, but just going there and just hanging out. We did that one Saturday night and did karaoke, and we had a blast. And me and my girlfriend have done that a couple times since then. If you're a football fan, they're the club for the San Francisco 49ers in Oklahoma. But even if you're just a Cowboy fan, they have all the games on Sunday. Yep. They have the Monday night game. They have the Thursday night game. They have the Sunday night game. They have all the college games, and they have great drinks. They have great food. And drinks, I'll be honest with you, drinks at all bars are the same. For me, it's the food. That's what makes the decision for me of where I want to go. It has to be good food, and honestly, it has to be affordable food. And Frisco Bar and Grill is both.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, you could build a rapport with your bartender and get any type of cocktail you just so desire, as long as you have a good relationship. But yeah, the food is definitely going to be unique at every single bar, and I definitely love the food there. Yes,
and you can find them 6750 Gaylord Parkway, Suite 120. Give them a call, 972-712 0808. All right, now let's jump into it. So let's work our way up. All right, so we are a Texas website. We are a Texas show. That doesn't mean we're going to be exclusive talking Texas stuff, but we do on the NFL show. So I kind of want to go Texas as far as, or Big 12, as far as the last few weeks. And we had some decent games. Florida State, Oklahoma, rematch of the 2001 national championship game. Way more offensive than that one. That was like 14-2 or something like that. Florida State wins 35-32. I think Oklahoma, man, I mean, when you look at everything that happened this season, they are where Texas was in like 2011, and there's a path for Oklahoma to be back to where Oklahoma was, or they're about to face 5 to 10 years of struggling. And I don't know if we know where the path is right now, but I thought for the most part that was an entertaining game. And for a bowl game, that's all you really can ask for. Just be entertaining.
Yeah, especially in this new day and age where they have a playoff system now. Me personally, I view the bowl games a lot different. I don't view them as important now at 38 as I used to when I was a teenager.
Well, I think they've changed, too.
They have changed a lot. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, just starting to get into sports, I would watch every single bowl game. I didn't care what time it was. I just loved it. But now it's still a good showcase of your team on a big network. You're the only game playing. It's a good opportunity for recruiting. Coaches get to showcase how they do their offense. And a lot of teenagers right now that are top prospects, they'll be watching all the bowl games because they want to see where they want to go to. It's an opportunity for them to get a look at the coach, how he interacts with the players on the sideline. It's a good opportunity for the coach to showcase some of the talent and like just, this could be a fun environment. Oh, this coach actually cares about me personally. He's not a robot.
Yeah.
So I think there's still big importance for bowls, but I think for most lay fans, they're going to be more focused on the playoffs only.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Bowl games now, if you're not in the playoffs, are for your young guys to get snaps. You look at Texas, like the bulk of their big guys, Overshawn on defense, Bijan Robinson on offense, both sat out. And I have no problem with that. If you're listening to a podcast and you're wanting us to be like, oh, the kids shouldn't be paid, and this, no, you and I are 100%, yeah, they should be paid. Yeah. And there's I have no problem. If you're a senior and you're going pro, don't play the bowl game. Hey, look, Bryce Young, you played, good for you. But let's also understand, Bryce Young is in a different boat because he's still trying to prove to people he still needs to show that he can be a guy that can be a first-round draft pick, a top 5 draft pick. Bijan Robinson at Texas, his draft pick's going to be wherever it's going to be. Nobody's going to go, oh, he's now a first round because of the bowl game. No, they already know where he's going to be. So I have no problem with, players getting paid. They should have been being paid a long time ago. And I have no problem with players sitting out. Your commitment to your team is the same as the team's commitment to you. And I'll say this again. If you're wanting to be, if you're one of those guys that believes a player shouldn't be able to transfer, okay, fine. Then coaches shouldn't be able to move jobs. That's that simple. If coaches can move jobs whenever they want, then players should be able to move wherever they want.
These coaches go into the homes of these teenagers and look at the parent's eye or their guardian's eye and guarantee, hey, I'm going to commit 4 years. I want to commit 4 years to this kid. I want to turn him from a young adult to a grown man, and he's going to be so prepared for the world. I agree with you. If coaches can leave, players can leave. I love the fact that they're getting paid. As someone with a finance background, I completely understand how much the universities are actually making off these players and off of football in general. So offering a full-time scholarship to every player still doesn't cover the amount of money that the actual team is generating for the university. So I'm perfectly fine with it. They're of age. They're adults. They can do. They have the responsibility. They could go serve our country in the armed forces right now.
Yeah,
like let them get a job. There's not. I mean, it's amateur in name only,
and it always has been.
But this is a big business. We are in America. We're in a very capitalistic country. This is big business. I'm sorry.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny that we're big on capitalism, and there's a subset of America that's very big on capitalism?
Yeah.
until it comes to college sports, and then they want to be non-capitalistic and be like, they get paid a salary because of their scholarship. No, they don't. And that's just that's a farce, and it's always been a farce. Yeah. If a guy, so I'll explain it best. Back when I was in college, my first time through college, I had a couple trips through college. My first time through college, I played sports. I couldn't do certain things. My future baby mama wife, she played the oboe. She could perform for the college, and she could go get paid to perform for the symphony in the city. I couldn't do that. I couldn't play baseball for the college and then go play baseball and get paid, for the minors or semi-pro. I had to pick and choose. Why is that? Why is sports? Why do we expect people that play sports to not be able to get paid? And the NCAA fumbled this 30 years ago. If they'd have gave a pittance of a salary to players, we'd never have Neil. We'd never be where we're at. But the NCAA kept kicking the can down the road until it finally exploded on them. And I'm sorry, if any average Joe in college can go to school and work on a scholarship, then an NFL or a college football player, college baseball player, college whatever sport should be able to do the same thing. I don't understand the argument against that. And people can say, well, the transfer's making it like free agency. So what? Who cares?
Yeah, let them go.
Let it be that way. Yeah. What is wrong with that? I think it just adds another season. You have recruiting season, and then you have transfer season. Now, I have no problem with them saying, okay, we need to make transfer be a window, like where it can only be between January 1st and spring football. I have no problem with that. Because I understand a team needs to be able to know, okay, who do we have going into the season? I get that. I have no problem with that. But if you're going to try to hamstring the financial gains of a player, then you and I are on a different argument path. Because I truly believe if a player can earn $5 million in the Neal, then they deserve it. Because that's what the going rate is, and that's supposed to be what capitalism is. The going rate pays the amount.
Yeah, competition is healthy. Competition is good. This should be if the NCAA, like you said, if the NCAA had actually agreed to a stipend of some sort,
we'd never be in this situation.
And the NCAA would not have an issue of existing in the next 10 to 20 years, and which that's very likely they won't be existing pretty soon. So, with the advent of the internet, 93, 30 years to win out year 30 of public widespread internet use. Mm-hmm. It makes even more sense now to pay these players because there's a lot of influencers. There's a lot of people that have a lot of followers. Well, why wouldn't a company want to have that person hawk their stuff to their hundreds of thousands of followers?
And we've had players quit sports to concentrate on YouTube.
Yeah.
One of the guys I watch, Isaac Punts, that's what he had to do. He had to literally quit. Now he's able to come back now, and he actually played, but he had to quit because he wanted to run his YouTube and make money. Why should a player have to make that decision?
Yeah.
That just makes absolutely no sense. Anyway, let's get off the soapbox. Let's talk football. Again, we started with Oklahoma. Texas loses to Washington 27-20 in the Alamo Bowl. Again, same thing. Texas had a ton of starters out because of they're going to pro. They're not going to play. Washington, again, that's just Texas got a lot of young guys snaps. That's going to pay off next year. Alabama destroyed Kansas State. I loved how everybody was pointing at that before TCU's game. See, this is why TCU doesn't deserve it because Alabama destroyed Kansas State. Yeah, in the Sugar Bowl that, again, both teams didn't have a lot to play for. TCU had a lot to play for, and they proved it. So let's jump into the playoffs. TCU shocks the world. They beat Michigan 51-45 in a game where TCU jumped out early. And give Michigan credit, a running-based team crawled back into that game with some big defensive plays and some big pass plays. This is what we wanted with the playoffs. And the same thing with Georgia, Ohio State, but we'll get into that one anyway. This is what we wanted, though. We wanted excitement. We wanted games that were up in the air, 50-50 contests, and that's exactly what we had. And Sonny Dykes and TCU win the game. But I don't think Jim Harbaugh and Michigan, I thought they showed very well in this game as well. I think we're in a weird era now, and you and I talked about this a little bit on the NFL with the Cowboys, where if you lose, all of a sudden you're trash. And that's not the case. Michigan lost, but Michigan still deserved to be in the Final Four. It's okay to be a Final Four team that loses in the semifinals. You shouldn't have to feel bad about, we shouldn't have been there. Michigan should have been there, and I think the game showed that.
Yeah, Michigan, they got there last year. Mm-hmm. Which was Harbaugh's best year with Michigan. They got blown out in the semifinal.
Oh, yeah, good point. This year they were maybe a lesser team, but had a better matchup.
This year, I once the playoffs were set, I thought Michigan would win the whole championship.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really thought this was the year. They have a really good team. Blake Corum being out did affect their running game. Now, if you look at the stat line as just a regular fan, you're going to see they had 186 yards on 40 carries. Great by all other standards, but in this game, there was a 54-yard run by Edwards to start the game. That was a great stop by TCU on that opening drive. So after that run, it was 1st and goal, and then TCU stopped Michigan 4th and goal, and that kind of like switched the game over, and TCU went up 21-3 in part because of that. But yeah, so Michigan's running game was stopped by TCU. TCU actually was just as physical as Michigan was. Michigan was able to coast through this season based off the physicality, and you saw it really in the de facto Big 12 or Big 10 title game against Ohio State, where Michigan went into Columbus and beat Ohio State by 3 touchdowns, just because they were just a more physical team and they asserted themselves in the second half. This game, TCU came with it. They came with it, and TCU didn't have Kendra Miller for most of the game. They had to go to the backup running back, Amari DeMarcado, and they were still just as physical. I mean, you see the score is 51-45. Both teams scored 2 touchdowns on defense.
Yeah.
Or they got 2 touchdowns because of turnovers from their defense. So it was a strong defensive performance. McCarthy, whenever Michigan has to pass the ball, it's almost always they're going to lose. They were kind of forced to pass the ball. Having said that, and you might disagree with me, at the very end of the game, that targeting call, where to me it looked like TCU had targeted the Michigan player.
Yeah,
and that was getting reviewed, and it got. It had held up because they didn't call it on the field, and it just was held up. To me, it was a targeting, but that basically ended the game. And it was, kudos to Michigan for coming back. They had to adjust. I really like Harbaugh, but my issue with him is I think his philosophy only gets you so far.
What do you mean?
I think his run heavy, solid defense. They were 3rd nationally in defense, and they allowed 51 points to TCU. So it definitely can be exposed outside of the Big Ten.
Here's the issue with the NFL the college football world is you get in a situation where even now, as we're trying to have these Power 5 conferences, until we get 12 playoff teams in, and I think it either starts this year or next year. Mm-hmm. I think, and I'm watching the targeting. I don't know. He hit him in the back. I get that he led with the helmet, but yeah, he hits him clearly in the back. I think if they'd have reviewed that, it wouldn't have been a targeting call. And I know I'm going off top, but the problem is Michigan's defense was really good, but they didn't play other teams in the region. They only played the Big Ten and a couple of non. Yeah. I think that when you get to the. So my whole belief is, and you said it earlier when we were talking, Neil, the NCAA is going to stop being here in a few years, and you're going to have a Power 5 kind of league, and it's going to become the NFL. And some people won't like that. I will. So what you'll have divisions in that league, and you'll have teams play each other. You'll have Alabama play Michigan on a regular because it won't matter because it'll be a non-conference game that won't count really against your conference record, and you can still go win the conference and still get in the playoffs. That's the whole reason I want 12 teams. It's not just because 12 teams get in, but it allows these teams to say, hey, let's play better teams in the non-conference to make ourselves better for the playoffs. Yeah. So Michigan can say, hey, let's go play a Big 12 team. Let's play TCU next year, and so that way we can kind of adjust to them if we, that style of play if we play in the league. And there is some negatives in that because you're going to see everybody kind of drift to the same style of play, which is like the NFL. But hey, the NFL is fun to watch, so I don't have an issue with that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the Harbaugh, of course, it sounds like Harbaugh's probably gone if there's an NFL job. But you and I still think that honestly, I think he's better fit for the NFL. I mean, the college world, because I think he's one of those. He's like Jimmy Johnson. He's really, really hard on the players, which can work in 3-year windows.
Yeah.
If you start expecting a guy to be under Jim Harbaugh for 8 years, and that's the thing that I always remind people when they talk about Jimmy and if he'd have stayed, even Troy Aikman, who was one of Jimmy's biggest defenders, admits, hey, if he'd have stayed another couple years, we'd have probably got just really tired, because it was mentally and emotionally almost abusive how he treated the team when they lost. And it just got to be, even Aikman has admitted, hey, I don't know if we win another Super Bowl with Jimmy Johnson, because it was just so hard under him. And so I kind of feel like Jim Harbaugh is making a mistake going pro, but if he does, he does. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that we see better region, cross region matchups. I think that's why I'm so excited about 12. I think we'll see more Bama. I keep saying Bama versus Texas, but they're about to be in the same conference. Yeah. But Bama versus Michigan in week 2 of the regular season. Texas versus Oklahoma State in week 1 of the regular season, because you're wanting to find your best matchups early so that can get you into the playoffs late.
Hey, a reason why I have an issue with at-large teams making the playoffs is because I really feel you should value a conference championship.
If it's at 4, yes,
yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, and this year it was 2 conference champions in Georgia and Michigan. So SEC, Big Ten. And then there was 2 at-larges. At-large Big Ten and Ohio State. At-large Big 12 and TCU. So TCU didn't even win their conference. And the conference championship, the conference champion of the Big 12, which is Kansas State, they got rewarded by getting destroyed by Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. And in the 12-team playoff next year, Alabama would be in the playoffs, and so would Kansas State. So I just feel that we'll talk about the other game later, but I kind of feel that at-large teams, if there's more than one at-large team in the 4-team system, it's just a big asterisk for me. But luckily, I mean, here I really thought Michigan was going to beat TCU by multiple scores. TCU came with it, though.
Yeah.
And kudos to them. This was the second highest scoring playoff game in the 9-year history. The record, I believe, was the Baker Mayfield game, Oklahoma versus Georgia in the 2017 season.
Oh, yeah.
That might have went to overtime, but it was like 54-48 Georgia. So I'm trying to think what else to talk about this game. Duggan had the Heisman Trophy runner-up, Max Duggan. He had a decent game. I just want to point that out. That's, to me, is one of the most impressive things. He threw for 2 touchdowns, threw for 2 interceptions. Yeah.
I thought if TCU was going to win, he'd have to have one of those, like, 18 of 25, 400 yards, 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He played okay.
Yeah.
And TCU won. Mm-hmm. And TCU scored 51 points. I think that bodes well. I'm going to say it now. I'm going to bury not bury the lead. I'm going to expose them. I think TCU wins the national championship. I think Ohio State showed that Georgia's defense is nothing like last year.
Yeah.
Even though I'll still make the case that you want to talk about having issues. I have an issue with how last year went down. Georgia and Alabama playing. Georgia loses. Oh, that's okay. Let's let them be in the playoffs anyway. That, to me, I will give the committee credit for this year. They said, okay, you know what, TCU lost, but you know what? They still deserve to be in. Because if you're going to let Georgia get in last year, and they got beat pretty handily by Alabama in the SEC championship game.
They did, yeah.
And so I will at least give them credit for being consistent on that. But, yeah, I don't know. I think TCU, I think it's their year. I think that they're going to beat Georgia.
Okay, so yeah, spoiler alert. Georgia won 42-41 over Ohio State.
18 points in the fourth quarter comeback.
Yeah, so message boards are already saying Ryan Day is going to be fired. I don't think so.
No, I think, again, just like Michigan, I think Ohio State showed well. Georgia just got hot. A lot of things broke their way in that fourth quarter that you need to happen.
Yeah.
There wasn't any moment where Georgia or with Ohio State I felt did anything like, oh, my God, that's the reason they lost. Georgia just made the plays in that fourth quarter. And sometimes we're in an era where we forget that sometimes you just tip your hat to the other team and say, hey, y'all made the plays, we didn't when it mattered. That doesn't mean we need to fire anybody or it doesn't mean we're trash. It just means you played a better fourth quarter.
My gut reaction for that other semifinal game was Ohio State was the better team that night. it was just a 50-yard field goal that didn't go the right way. If you looked at Noah, I'm sorry, I completely forgot his name. Noah Ruggles, the kicker for Ohio State. You look at his eyes; he looked like he was not ready for the moment.
Like Mike Vanderjack against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, which is funny because I think Noah Ruggles is a senior for Ohio State, and Vanderjack was like 8 years in with the Colts at that time. So it's just funny, like a senior leadership like him was like, about to crap himself basically in this moment. To me, Ohio State was a better team in the other matchup. Georgia responded well after getting punched basically by Ohio State to start the game. Man, I was very impressed with Ohio State's receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. Yes, the son of Marvin Harrison, the former receiver for the Colts. Stroud, I was kind of down on him the whole season. A lot of people still have view him in high regard. I didn't think he'd played well against Michigan in the regular season finale, but this was easily his best game of the year. 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he ran for another 34 yards. He was the reason why Ohio State was doing so well. This game shows me the first-round talent he really is. But on the other side, kudos to Georgia. I mean, they're not as good as they were last year, especially on defense, but Stetson Bennett with the veteran leadership, he had almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. This is not the style. Again, they're like Michigan in the sense that they're more of a running team.
Look, first off, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'll give Bennett credit. I'm still just annoyed that he was a Heisman finalist. He threw 25 touchdowns, I think, on the year.
So,
no.
Okay. I think Bijan probably should have got.
I don't even. Hey, look, and as a Texas fan, I'm not even talking about Bijan.
And as someone that is not a fan of any particular team in college football, this is my objective opinion. I think Bijan should have been there. He was a highlight reel the whole season. But having said that, I can see why they'll put the veteran leader of a team.
I'm sorry. This is why the Heisman has become a joke. And this is nothing on Stetson Bennett personally. Hell, I might be kin to him. My last name is Bennett. But there is no reason in the world, in any year, outside of COVID, where teams didn't play a lot of games, that a guy that on the year threw for 23 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, averaged 68%. That's not bad. Averaged 68%. Threw for 3,800 yards. Should be a Heisman finalist.
I mean, 3,800 yards and 68% is really good, though.
Not in today's era, dude. That's average. Hell, Quinn Ewers at Texas almost had that kind of year, and everybody's talking about how he needs to be benched for Archie Manning going in. I think it's the same way with the NFL MVP. You and I, we didn't even get to talk about this, but NFL MVP. Why isn't Austin Eckler an NFL MVP? The dude is a running back, has over 1,000 yards rushing, 100 yards receiving. How is that not an MVP candidate? Yet it's going to go to Jalen Hurts or Justin Herbert or somebody like that. We have got to get out of this whole thing where quarterback is the only thing that deserves the most valuable player. It's just stupid. And it's just, I thought we were in an era where we realized that, hey, all quarterbacks don't have to be amazing. You can have an okay quarterback and win a Super Bowl. The Eagles won with an okay quarterback. The Baltimore Ravens won with an okay quarterback. You don't have to be a quarterback that's the greatest quarterback in the world. So why are we still in MVPs and Heismans? It's only quarterbacks.
When was the last time an MVP won a Super Bowl?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's been a while.
Emmitt Smith? No, I know there's been more since then. But no, that's a really good point.
So I was going to say, Stetson Bennett actually ranked 8th nationally in passing yards. It wasn't like he was, some slouch. Now, those passing touchdowns are very low compared to everybody else. I think he ranks in the 30s. But completion percent at 68%, that's very good.
I know, that's not bad.
That's
okay, so if Stetson...
That's top... That's top 13.
Okay, so why isn't Frank Harris of UTSA a Heisman Trophy winner?
Competition.
He was
Perception.
He was 7th. He threw for more yards, more touchdowns. His completion percentage was right about the same.
Quality of opponent.
By the way, so here's the deal. Here's another. I didn't even realize this. Thank you for pulling up stats, because this is the deal. So Stetson Bennett was a Heisman finalist, and he threw 292 passes. Everybody else around him. Well, I say that, but hell, Caleb Williams won it. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was reading the wrong stat. My bad. He threw for 429 passes. He completed 292. But you look at other quarterbacks, Austin Reed, and I know it's Austin or Western Kentucky. He threw 600 times. Michael Penix Jr. of Washington, a really good quarterback. He
was an early contender.
I think next year he's a junior, and I think he's coming back. I think
he
next
is coming
year,
back. Yeah,
yeah. I think next year he will be. But and it's nothing against Stetson Bennett. It's Georgia's good, so that must mean the quarterback is a Heisman finalist. Now, I just have an issue with that.
Yeah, it's okay. That I agree with. It's almost like the Heisman voters want to look at who's the number one ranked team, who's their most recognizable player. Hell, I would have even put Brock Bowers, their tight end, over Stetson Bennett at that point. Or you can put a lineman in there. Stetson Bennett had a great year, but by no means was he. He was more of like here's an invite. Congratulations on a great career.
Yeah. And we just got to stop doing that. Yeah. Should Caleb Williams even won it?
Who should have won it this year?
I'll admit, I watch college football, but I don't watch enough to know every player.
So it was C.J. Stroud's to lose.
And then he lost it.
Bryce Young won the Heisman last year, but you didn't think he was going to repeat because it's never happened. Only one time in the history has it ever happened. So it was Archie Griffin in 74, 75, I believe, for Ohio State. So you knew Bryce Young wasn't going to win. He did have a great year, but you knew he wasn't going to win. Even Alabama's 2 losses. A 2-point conversion by LSU, the miracle kick at the end for Tennessee. That's the only reason why they have the 2 losses. Now, he didn't look good against UT, but
yeah, that was overall, early. You're allowed to have you're allowed to have a bad game early. And then he still drove them down on the game-winning kick to beat UT.
Yeah.
So that to me, you and I have always talked about, that's the sign of a great quarterback. You can have a bad game. That's Roger Staubach.
Yeah.
That's the thing. My dad. You asked me earlier, was my dad, because we were watching YouTube NFL films and we were watching Roger Staubach. You're like, was my dad a big Roger Staubach fan? Yes, but my dad always made the point of, there were so many games where if Roger Staubach had played well in the first and second quarters, they weren't needing the heroics of the fourth quarters.
He would never be captain comeback.
Yes. And that's a valid point. And I've always felt that. And I probably got that from my dad. I've always felt that. Great for coming back, but why were you needing to come back? Yeah. Why weren't you better? And but yeah, and I'm sorry. And for all you that believe a quarterback and you're Georgia fans, I get it. And I will admit I didn't realize it's a weird year where only 3,800. And I say only, but that 3,800 is a top 10 because we've had years where 4,000, 4,500 to 4,000 was your bottom.
You could actually. Sorry to talk about NFL, but you could actually translate that discussion to Patrick Mahomes this year. He'll probably win the MVP this year. Stats are amazing, but there's a lot of games they should have blown out their opponents. And because of some of his struggles early in the game, it was close.
Okay.
But he came back and won those games.
But he gets a pass because he's basically him and Travis Kelce now. He's literally got Jerick McKinnon having 8 straight touchdowns. First time a running back's had 8 straight touchdowns in a game, in 8 straight games since the 40s. He's got Isaiah Pacheco getting 7 touchdowns on the year. So I think that's why people give him a little bit more credit this year because it was kind of felt that it was Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, and now it was Patrick Mahomes. But I agree with you. He struggled early. And that's
I would give Kelce the MVP nod more than Mahomes in the sense that
I'd have no problem with that. But again, you're not going to get any non-quarterback in the NFL unless a running back runs for 4,000 yards. Yeah. There's going to get an MVP. I think Ezekiel Elliott in 2016 and Derrick Henry on his 2,000-yard years.
2020,
the only 2 running backs that made a case for MVP years in the last 10 years. Fairly.
How about Justin Jefferson this year for the Vikings?
Yeah, I think that he is literally what's carrying the Vikings.
Yeah, this is
as we morph back into the NFL side.
No, this is a good conversation because I'm trying to think. There was really no one that stood out in college football. It was almost like a 2000. I'm trying to think of the year where the number. I think 07 year where the top team kept losing each week. It was
that the Kansas Missouri year.
Yeah, it was the Kansas Missouri year. And so you don't really know.
Todd, what was that quarterback for Kansas State?
Todd Reesing.
Yeah, Todd Reesing and then Chase Daniels for Missouri.
Yeah, and then remember that Kansas team had Keep Talib.
Oh, yeah, that was a good team. That was a really good team. But again, it goes back to, and I know they have to do it by votes, but wouldn't this have been a perfect year to have a running back?
Yeah, Muhammad Ibrahim from Minnesota, ranked third nationally in the Big Ten, 1,600 yards. Bijan was fifth nationally. Chase Brown for Illinois was fourth nationally. Illinois had a really good year this year. They lost today in the bowl game against Mississippi State.
Everybody wants to make fun of Belima, but he's building something at Iowa or at Illinois.
He looks way better at Illinois.
Yeah. He just.
By the way, sorry, before you continue, kudos to Mississippi State honoring Mike Leach. They put a pirate logo on their helmet, and actually, it's one of the better looks I've ever seen.
And kudos for them winning today, 19-10. We'll talk in the offseason about Mike Leach. Mike Leach is a special guy. He's one of the few guys that could beat your team, and yet you still were fine with it because it was Mike Leach. And but also for all that, he also was terrible at in-game decisions at times. Yep. And there's a reason why he never was legitimately a national championship contender outside of 1 year. Anyway, let's go to it. Georgia versus TCU. I've already said it. I just think TCU's on it. I think in college you still have the magical years. I think the year Ohio State won it, that was a magical year.
That was the first year of the playoff.
Yes,
Ezekiel Elliott led them.
Everybody buried them early, and they were like, why are they even here? They shouldn't be here. And boom, they ran off and won a national championship.
Has there ever been another Pac-12 representative in the playoffs?
Not yet.
Because that was Ohio State and Oregon.
Yep.
Mariota's
Heisman year.
Yeah, and Ohio State beat them pretty good.
I just think TCU. I just think TCU's a better team than Georgia. I think Georgia is good this year. They're not as good defensively as last year, and I still claim if you make Stetson Bennett beat you, you will win the game. And I think TCU's defense is good enough to do that.
Just like what they did in the semifinal, they made J.J. McCarthy have to win the game for Michigan, and they escaped it with a win. But
again, Max Duggan's 2 interceptions was a lot to why Georgia was able to, Michigan was able to climb back into that game. TCU there for a minute looked like they were about to be over in the third quarter.
I mean, TCU is a team that wasn't even invited into the Big 12 when they first formed in '96.
Yep, and
here they are now. The only Big 12 team that's made it, that's won a playoff game, and now they're going to be in the championship. And they didn't even win their conference this year. So it's just, hey, they've been underdogs. I really feel, I've talked to you about this before, but I really feel bad for Gary Patterson because this is basically his team.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's the thing you're going to have to wonder about Sonny Dykes is this is a great year, but
who was the Auburn coach in 2010 when they won the championship with Cam Newton? Was it Gene Chizik?
Yeah, it was Gene Chizik, old UT defensive coordinator.
It's one of those things like they win the championship. You think Chizik's going to be there 10 years. He gets fired after 3.
Yep.
Yeah. So is this going to be a situation where that happens with Dykes or?
Yeah, because the expectations have now raised at Tennessee or TCU. They're not going to be happy with 9-3 in a Cotton Bowl.
Yep.
That's a good point because I do think that's a big question because I think Gary Patterson just lost his way as head coach. I think he'd been there too long. I think the message had gotten dull. Just people weren't listening, players weren't listening. I think Sonny Dykes was the perfect breath of fresh air, but will he be able to sustain it? Because what Gary Patterson did so well is he took 3 stars and had them play better against 5 stars.
Yeah.
Can Sonny Dykes do that consistently?
Yeah.
It's in a year, that's great. He will have cred. Even if he doesn't win, he still has cred. He took TCU to the national championship. But how will that play 3 years from now?
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it. That's our inaugural. Well, our first one in 10 years. We did one in, I think it was 2013, actually, when we did Outdrink the Coverage, wasn't it?
2014.
Was it 2014?
Yeah.
Okay, so 8 years ago. So this is the first college show. Oh, in 9 years, technically, if you want to. I think it's 8.5 because I think we were doing it in 2014 football, or, like November.
Yeah.
But for posterity's sake, we will say the first show in 9 years. We will have more. We're going to have all the emails and all that kind of stuff here changing. So right now, just go to Facebook, Outdrink the Coverage, type that in. That'll be our Facebook page. Until we're going to do a championship show next week as well. We're in studio now. That one's going to actually be video. We'll be linking on and showing you all that. But until then, that's Intern No. I'm Terry Bennett. This has been Outdrank the Coverage, the college edition on S2S Sports. Wow, that sounds cool to say. Right here on S2S Sports, part of L4 Media Company.